Hi, folks. It's a real pleasure to talk today to Matt Taibbi. Some of us have known Matt and covered Matt for many, many years, but Matt really hit the national scene a few months ago as the author of The Twitter Files, where he did with Barry Weiss, he did an exhaustive exploration of the Twitter files, looking at the censorship that had taken place. It was a remarkable piece of journalism, and it just won him the Dow Prize for media excellence with the National Journalism Center. So the first thing I want to say, Matt, is congratulations. You really, really did deserve that prize.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and it's great to have a new investigative journalism award. I think that's very, very much needed.
Don't you agree on that one? I find it that in journalism today, it doesn't matter what the network is. There's just very little investigative journalism going on. There's very little. I don't know if it's funding or appetite or energy or time. I don't know what it is, but no one does this anymore, and it's really hurting the public conversation.
Oh, I think a lot of that has to do with the structure of the media. The business model really depends on speed now and virality. So, a lot of the things that make good investigative journalists, like being willing to have an open mind and being willing to not publish if you don't have anything, taking the extra time to make phone calls, like all those things, they don't really teach that stuff anymore. So I do find that younger reporters don't really know how to do the job as well.
Yeah, and I mean, there is also the element of laziness. Somebody did a report. It was some international media group did a report during the first Gulf War, I think it was, on how many journalists were reporting outside the green zone. And there wasn't a single American at one point. And there were only like 3 in the entire world that were outside the green zone reporting on what was happening during the war. Everybody else was just getting reports back. And I tell people, when you see news from the Middle East, I don't mean the war that's taking place, but news before the war. If you look carefully, the news was reported on Monday that had happened last Thursday because there was nobody covering it. And it's just, we're back to the 17th century where scribes are sending messages out. It's to me, it's troubling. Because you've got to have a news media if you want an educated electorate, and we don't have it. But let me ask you this about the Twitter files. Look, you are a liberal. You're a proud liberal. You make no bones about who you are, what you do. But when you did this, you in fact turned on the narrative of so many on the left, and you actually did it long before the Twitter files. To be absolutely correct about this, you were questioning the whole Russiagate thing years ago, a long time ago. People turned on you. People in your own community turned on you. What was that like from a personal standpoint?
It was weird and off-putting. I'm not going to lie. For a long time, I think in our business, we were supposed to keep separate, what our political opinions were and the job of reporting. I was actually once considered kind of a darling in the business because I was willing to criticize Barack Obama during, after the 2008 financial crisis. I did a number of reports in Rolling Stone that were pretty tough on the Democrats. They were tough for Republicans too, but a lot of that crisis reporting at the time, it was praised in the journalism community if you were willing to go in all directions. And with the Russiagate story, I don't really see that as a left-right issue. It was just factually wrong. And then with the Twitter files, yes, there was an element to that story that saw probably more people in the United States certainly were having their content removed who were conservatives Globally, however, I think it's much more of like an inside-outside type thing, like rich-poor type of divide. And but yeah, I was absolutely pilloried by the mainstream press here for even doing the story at all, which was amazing.
And the stunning thing was that you just took facts and you just republished actual paragraphs in your report. That's all. It was just an endless repetition of what you were saying in there, which was stunning. You know Bernie Goldberg. I assume you know Bernie?
Not too well. No, I mean, I know the book. Yeah.
Okay, so Bernie Goldberg was Bill O'Reilly's media guy, and I'm going to raise him for a reason here. Bernie would tell you he's a liberal. Bernie would also tell you he strives to be a good journalist, and he does. But Bernie was the fellow back in the 1990s when he was at CBS. He was constantly trying to tell his colleagues there are two sides to the tax issue. But he was always getting one side and one side only. And finally, in exasperation, he wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal where he gently took his colleagues to task, saying, we've got to do a better job. We've got to report both sides of this. And for that, he was sent to Siberia. And the reason I asked you this question, Matt, was because when I saw the attacks on him publicly from his colleagues, Dan Rather and others, publicly attacking him on it, I called him and we didn't know each other. And I said, this is just not fair. What's happening to you? And I'm sorry this is happening to you. You took a principled stand. He called me back and he was tragic. He was so sad because it had hit him so personally. And that's why I asked you this question. Politically, you're a pro. You're a journalist. Everybody, we beat the crap out of you all the time. You beat the crap out of us. That's fine. But it's personal. And I do feel for people like you when you take a hit for doing something correct. So I just had to get that off my chest.
I appreciate that. I really do. I mean, I do think, any journalist who goes into the business expecting to keep their friends has probably made a bad career decision. The nature of the job is that you're going to offend people in your Rolodex sooner or later. And part of what we're trained to do is, in those moments, you have to just bite the bullet and do it. What's particularly strange, though, about this moment compared to what happened with Bernard is that there's been this very, very drastic change in how people in the mainstream press look at certain issues. I mean, 15 years ago, most of the people in the media were hardcore free speech advocates, and they have done a complete 180 on that issue. Like, you can't even get some of those issues before the big networks anymore. So it's a similar situation in some ways, but in other ways it's even weirder than what happened with him.
Well, I was at a Palo Alto at a meeting with Mark Zuckerberg a few years ago. He opened the meeting by saying something really which I thought was remarkable. He said, and it's almost a direct quote, I think, he said, "You're seated at ground zero of the far left in America," which is Palo Alto, and which, of course, is true. But that being the case, do you believe that big tech could ever be objective, not conservative, liberal, but just objective? Could it ever be the platform, an objective platform of ideas, or do radicals have such control of it that free speech is not going to be allowed?
I think in the original conception of the internet, a lot of the people who were running things were a little bit more libertarian in their conception, that they didn't really have a whole lot of interest in trying to moderate content. They had a lot of utopian ideas about sort of freedom of information. A lot of them were also just sort of nakedly interested in getting rich, and the idea of allowing anything that wasn't criminally offensive speech. I think that was kind of the standard once upon a time. But there was a change in the culture there. I think what you're describing is an influx of people who are younger who came in the 2010s especially, and they did feel like it was their job to police what people said, and that was kind of a new thing. I mean, if you think about the way the internet was originally, it was completely crazy, and the appeal of it was how anarchic it was and how unpredictable it was. And now it's completely opposite. So yeah, I think you do see, there is a class element to this too. It's just a lot of these people are all socially from the same place. They all went to school, the same schools, and they sympathize with each other, and they don't really like the views of other people.
Yeah, putting it mildly. In journalism today, everything's polarized, which is a tragedy. What do you do about it? I mean, do you think there's an appetite for real news in America anymore, or is everybody so much in their camps that they have no desire to listen to anybody but what's in their camp?
I really believe. I mean, I'm idealistic about this. I think there is always an appetite for good journalism, for accurate reporting. People, especially if you see it with situations like COVID and the Ukraine war, people desperately want to know just the basics. And I think there's a lot of frustration now because people don't know where to go to get that information. They feel like everywhere they go, they're getting a shaded version of something. And that makes things incredibly difficult for audiences, but also it makes it very difficult for the journalists, because once upon a time our jobs were hard, but it was straightforward. Like, as long as we get something, whatever's true, we'll put it out there, and then it's kind of up to you. That was the compact. The audience does the responsible thing with the information, and that's the relationship. But that relationship's been kind of broken now because I think the media has decided that people can't be trusted with information, and that's too bad. I think we should go back to that old trust relationship, and that would be a way to revive the media.
In the newsrooms that you're familiar with today, is the basic concept of report who, what, where, and when? Are those the ground rules anymore, or is the why now inserted into stories where you've got to analyze it and give your perspective on it? Is gumshoe reporting gone?
Well, one of the things that was most disturbing that we found in the Twitter files was it was an academic report that was done by Stanford, and it was about how we need to throw out what they called the Pentagon Papers standard. And the whole idea of it was that journalism and the media had been badly damaged in 2016 by the WikiLeaks disclosures, and we now had to think more about provenance than content, right? In other words, where is this information coming from, and what are they trying to accomplish by releasing it? We used to not think about that stuff. In fact, there are Supreme Court cases that tell us we don't have to think about it. If it's stolen, we can print it as long as it's in the public interest. Reporters used to just mainly care about what the information was. Is it true? Then we'll put it out there. Now, they're trying to get us to focus on this other standard of where does it come from and what are they trying to do by making it public. And I think we have to ignore that. And you're right, the who, what, where, why thing has kind of vanished from the ethos of a lot of reporters now. They're much more interested in trying to craft something that they think is going to impact the dialogue in a certain way, which I don't see that as being our job.
Well, what do you say about AI and journalism? Where do you think that's headed?
It's probably headed no place good. I think mainly what we saw, again, in the Twitter files is they were already trying to use machine learning to algorithmically analyze content and user behavior. I think what AI is going to do is it's going to try to identify ahead of time news stories that will appeal to certain demographics over others. It's going to start picking out the topics for reporters ahead of time, maybe even doing some of the work for them, which I really worry about. Also, there's the research process. People are using Chat GPT to look things up. This is all part of this general trend of reporters not liking the telephone anymore or face-to-face contact, which is a really bad thing because there's a million little things that you pick up in actual human interaction that are really crucial that you can't get doing it that way. So, I worry about it. I don't think it's a good thing.
Once upon a time, we did 20-minute phone interviews several times a day, especially talking to print reporters. I haven't done a phone print interview. I don't remember the last time I did one. Because if anything, I'll be sent a text or an email. I need someone to say one sentence. And I think you believe that. So therefore, please give me that one sentence to complete my paragraph, to complete my story.
Exactly.
It's not inquisitive enough. We did one study on looking at Bard, which is the Google AI. And I've got to tell you, Matt, some of the things that we discovered were amazing. For example, you ask Bard, what is the Irish Republican Army, and it tells you. You ask them what Antifa is, it'll tell you. You ask what Black Lives Matter is, it'll tell you. You ask what Hamas is, and it will say it doesn't know. We asked, what is the Vatican and where is it? It'll tell you. What is and where is Mecca? It'll tell you. What is Jerusalem and where is it? It doesn't know. It's just, these things are being tampered with. And when nobody knows it, including, I think, journalists today don't even know it in their outlets because they're relying on this amorphous thing to do their work for them. Golly, it scares me. Okay, a final question. I want to put you on this.
Just quickly on that, we some friends of mine and I did a little experiment on that. We also found that some of these AI programs are pretending that they don't know who the CIA chiefs of station are, even if they've been published before.
Really?
So there's an angle there, too, where you're not going to get certain information about certain agencies, especially if they've been part of developing those programs.
Interesting. I'm going to put you on the spot with the final question. Putting aside every place you work at today or have ever worked at, what's the best news outlet in America today?
Ooh, wow, that is a really tough question. I couldn't say. I would say that the best journalism tends to be local and it tends to be beat oriented. Right. So if you have a local newspaper and there's somebody who covers the courts every day, it's usually something like that. So if you those people all have sources, they're all doing the job the way the job has historically been done. The place where things have really gotten bent out of shape is at the national level. So if you ask me, what's the best national news organization right now? It's hard for me to say because it's a completely different job than it used to be. I think depending on where you live, whoever is covering, courts, highways, the state legislature, they're mostly just doing the work.
Yeah. I think. And my counsel to conservatives is always never rely on one site. Look at an amalgamation. Look at conservative sites. Look at liberal sites. If you're looking at Fox, look at CNN. Look at the BBC. You may not agree with something. It doesn't matter. It'll give you a perspective that you don't have just watching one of them. Matt Taibbi, thank you. Let me leave you with this. Winston Churchill once said of democracy that is the worst form of government except for all the rest. And I believe that about the American news media. It's the worst media in the world except for all the rest. So thank you, Matt Taibbi. Thank you, Matt, for everything you've done for this country. Thank you.
Appreciate it.